President Trump looking to turn the page this morning after Republicans are forced to pull the plug on the GOP bill to replace Obamacare. Now the White House is setting its sights on another ambitious goal, tax reform. But even as the president forges ahead, he is jabbing at conservatives who helped scuttle the GOP health care bill. Early this morning, the president tweeted this: Democrats are smiling in D.C. that the Freedom Caucus, with the help of the Club for Growth and Heritage, have saved Planned Parenthood and Obamacare. Congressman Kevin Brady of Texas is chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee and House Deputy Whip. He joins us right now. Good morning, sir. Good to have you on the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, Maria.
Congressman, we want to talk about where things stand now. So why don't you talk to us about that? What happens now, Congressman?
Well, look, last week didn't end the way we had hoped. We're not going to dwell on it. We're getting ready for the next big game, and that is tax reform. The good news is Ways and Means Republicans have spent 5 years getting ready for this moment. House Republicans have spent the last year getting ready for this moment. And we continue to make our tax reform plan even better. And so we're going to wade straight into it. And Maria, I think we've talked before, look, we never stopped working on transforming the blueprint into legislation, listening to the business community, to our stakeholders, to folks back home. And so we're going full steam ahead with this. Okay,
so is there any way at all, Congressman, that a vote happens in the next couple of days on the health care bill? Or is that dead? Are we just turning the page and shifting the priority to tax reform right now?
Sure, I think turning the page. Look, there may be an effort to do a repeal-only bill, but that's a show vote. It would require 8 Democrat senators to support repeal, and as you know, that's not going to happen. So look, let's move ahead on tax reform. It's exciting. It's why we came here. I think it's the #1 priority for both the president and Republicans as well in Congress. So let's get onto the field that we're the most comfortable on.
All right, so let's talk about that, because people are wondering if you're going to have the same kind of divisive battle when you really get into the nitty-gritty on tax reform over this border adjustment tax. So I want to ask you about that. But first, let me ask you this, Congressman, because Paul Ryan on Friday said the health care bill's failure, quote, does make tax reform more difficult, but it doesn't in any way make it impossible. Why is it more difficult, Congressman?
Well, it's more difficult because the Obamacare tax is $1 trillion on small businesses, on families, on the economy, stays in place, and it will. Those taxes will stay in place as long as Obamacare is in place, but we're not going to saddle tax reform with those taxes. That's why the Speaker said this isn't insurmountable. We're going to move forward with the boldest tax reform in a generation. But look, this is tough stuff. There's a reason this only happens once a generation. You can expect special interests to weigh in, Wall Street to weigh in, Washington, D.C. to pick it apart. That's just the nature of tax reform. What I do know, the easiest way to make tax reform fail is to not go bold, to not try to leapfrog America from, I think, 31st in the world back into that top 3 or better position so we can compete and win anywhere in the world, especially here at home.
So the priorities are what? You want to get the corporate tax rate down, you want to get individual tax rates down, and you want to simplify it to 3 brackets. Go through where your priorities are for tax reform.
So the priorities are growth, designing a code not built to punish people or wring money from them, but actually to grow jobs, wages in the U.S. economy. We want to leapfrog America from nearly dead last among our global competitors up to that lead pack and keep us there. And then we want a tax code so fair and simple that 9 out of 10 Americans can file using a postcard-style system. We've decided, since this is just once in a generation we get this opportunity, we can't go mediocre. We can't shoot for the middle of the pack. We have to be very bold, and that's why these provisions that we're recommending recognize how our competitors are beating us today. We know these are big changes in the tax code, some 30, 50 years of current tax policy. That's why we've been listening, and that's why as we've listened, we have continued to modify the boldest provisions that we've got there. We want to make sure this works in a very pro-growth way.
How important is raising revenue while you're also cutting taxes, Congressman? Because this border adjustment tax is supposed to raise, what, $1 trillion over 10 years? And you already go into this process down $1 trillion because you don't have those taxes taken out of the health care bill that you wanted. So how do you get revenue moving up?
Yeah.
Does that mean a border tax is definitely in there?
Well, I believe it's a given anyway, but it's not because of the revenue. That's a big part of it, but the main reason for having that there is our competitors. We want to make sure there's a level playing field between foreign products and made in America products here as well as abroad. We want to simplify the tax code, which is what border adjustment does. It also eliminates any tax incentives to move manufacturing jobs or headquarters overseas, and so taking that out would have severe consequences. Clearly, we couldn't leapfrog, nor would we be competitive. So that's why we are working on significant modifications to make sure that we phase this in, design it right, create the most growth we can.
Now, the White House has not agreed to any border adjustment tax just yet.
Well, I don't think they've made a decision there. What I do know is that the president said repeatedly that he's tired of American workers and companies having to fight with one hand tied behind their back without a level playing field here and around the world as well. That's exactly what border adjustment achieves. But here's my thinking. Look, we have so much in common with the Trump administration. It wouldn't make sense to have a separate tax bill from Secretary Mnuchin, a separate one from Gary Cohn, a third from whomever. Why not take the basis of the House plan that leapfrogs America into the top 3 best places on planet for that new job? Let's work together to make those adjustments along with the Senate. Let's be ready to move this year.
Okay, you want to move this year, but where's the wiggle room, Congressman? If you can't get a border adjustment tax through, is there any other wiggle room where you can see raising revenue? For example, there are some people who are saying, forget about a 20% corporate tax rate. It ought to be all the way up to 28%. Would you agree to that?
Boy, no, we will not. That will not make us competitive. That won't even get us to the middle of the pack. And frankly, we're getting our brains beat out because our competitors are beating us with lower rates. They no longer tax worldwide. They border adjust, all of which we have to do to be able to compete and win, not just here, but around the world as well. And so, look, I think we've got the basics in place. We've got some work to do. The Trump team's a smart team. Their economic team knows just how critical this is. So, look, I see a lot of elements in place going forward. And here's a final point. Well, not a final point, but on revenue neutrality, or in other words, making the budget balance throughout there. We're going for growth. We're going to leapfrog America, but we're also helping balance the budget. We think the right thing to do is grow the economy in such a significant way. It helps us get back to a balanced budget and to that day when we start paying down the national debt.
What are the odds that you have a real battle over the way that tax reform looks, whether it's a border adjustment tax, whether it's the corporate rate that is the battle, whether it's the deductions, mortgage interest deduction, charitable deduction, taking away the deductions? What are the odds that all of that battle leads to failure and you don't get this done either this year?
Look, I think all this is difficult. That's why tax reform only happens once in a generation. But I'll tell you, everything that drove the Reagan reforms has recreated itself. An American public who's just sick of this complicated tax code full of lobbyist loopholes and special interests. You've got great ideas from lawmakers, and you've got a president willing to lead. So I'll tell you, the odds are greater than ever this year to pass tax reform.
All right, and will it be retroactive to the beginning of 17?
Well, that's our plan, and we've got to move forward with this. We want growth on day one, but more importantly, not just growth for a couple years. We want to be able, again, to vault America back into the lead and keep us there for decades. So do you get started on this week? I mean, what's your timeline in terms of really getting into the details of tax reform? Yeah. Great question. We've never stopped working. We've been running a parallel track on tax reform all throughout healthcare as well. So we'll continue to make improvements. We are planning to move this on the Ways and Means Committee in the spring, have this ready for the Senate to go as well. So look, we've still got some work to do, but we also, I think, have momentum from the policy and the belief that we can go bold and we can do this.
All right, we will leave it there. Congressman, we'll be watching. This is very exciting. We will be certainly watching, and I know the markets will as well, very closely. Congressman Kevin Brady, good to speak with you, sir.